In the center of a bustling city, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds, lived a wealthy businessman named Alexander. His life was full of luxury, expensive cars, lavish parties, and constant trips around the world. He was the owner of a successful company that brought him millions, but despite all his achievements, he felt empty inside. Every day, waking up in his huge mansion, he asked himself, what really matters? The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in bright shades of orange and purple. Alexander, returning from a business meeting, sat in his car, lost in thought. He looked at people rushing about their business and felt that they were living a real life, full of emotions and experiences. Unlike him, who seemed to have lost touch with reality, his days were filled with numbers and reports. But he felt no joy from his successes. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a figure on the sidewalk. It was an ordinary man named Victor, who looked tired and lost. His clothes were worn out and his eyes were full of sadness. He was sitting on a cardboard box, hugging his knees with his hands, and looking at the ground, as if he was looking for answers to his questions. Alexander felt a strange attraction to this man. There was such sincerity and depth in his gaze that it touched the strings of his soul. Without thinking, he stopped his luxury car and got out. Passers-by cast surprised glances at him, but Alexander paid no attention to them. He walked up to Victor and sat down next to him, feeling the cold wind penetrate his suit. "What happened to you?" he asked, trying to speak softly so as not to frighten the man. Victor, surprised by the attention, looked up and met Alexander's eyes. His gaze was filled with disbelief and surprise. "I lost my job," he began, his voice shaking. "My family was torn apart, and now I'm alone, without a means of support." He spoke of his hardships, of how life had unexpectedly turned against him. Despite all his trials, there was a sincerity and strength in his voice that Alexander couldn't ignore. Listening to Victor, Alexander saw in him not just a homeless person, but a person with potential who was hungry for change. There was such passion and desire in his words to change his destiny that it touched the businessman's heart. He remembered his own difficulties, how he once started his path, and how important it was to have support in difficult times. "You are not alone," Alexander said, feeling he had to do something. "I can help you." These words were the beginning of something new, and in that moment an invisible connection was formed between them that promised to change their lives forever. Alexander did not know what exactly he was going to do, but in his heart a hope was born that Victor could become not just his protégé, but a real partner in something greater. The sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, and the city began to sink into the evening darkness. But for Alexander and Victor, this was only the first chapter of their story, full of possibilities and hopes. After their first meeting, Alexander couldn't get Victor out of his mind. His thoughts kept returning to the moment he saw this man sitting on the sidewalk and heard his story. An idea was born inside him that he felt could change not only Victor's life, but his own as well. He knew he had the opportunity to do something meaningful, something that could restore his sense of purpose and fulfillment. The next day, as the sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon, Alexander got into his car and headed to the same place where he had met Victor. He felt excited and at the same time afraid. What if Victor didn't want to accept his help? What if he didn't believe in himself? These thoughts tormented him, but he knew he had to try. He couldn't leave Victor in the state he was in. As he pulled up to the curb, his heart began to beat faster. He saw Victor sitting on the same cardboard box, and just like last time, his eyes were fixed on the ground. Alexander got out of the car and walked up to him. "Victor," he said, trying to sound confident, "I came back to talk to you." Victor raised his head, and his eyes were again filled with distrust. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice full of wariness. "I want to offer you a chance," Alexander said, trying to sound calm. "Are you willing to work with me?" The words hung in the air, and Victor seemed unable to believe his ears. "Work? But I don't have any skills. Victor exclaimed, his voice shaking with emotion. He couldn't understand how a successful businessman like Alexander could offer him a job. Don't worry, I'll teach you, Alexander replied, feeling his own determination grow stronger. I have a business and I see potential in you. You can be my partner. These words, spoken with sincerity, were a revelation to Victor. He couldn't believe that someone like Alexander saw him as more than just a homeless person. Victor fell silent, his thoughts racing. He didn't know what to say. On the one hand, he felt that this offer was his only chance at a new life, but on the other, the fear of the unknown paralyzed him. Why do you want to help me? He finally asked, his voice full of doubt. Because I see in you a man who wants to change his destiny, Alexander replied, his eyes shining with sincerity. I myself was once in a difficult situation, and I was lucky to meet people who helped me. Now I want to do the same for you. The words touched Victor. He remembered his dreams, how he had once wanted more than just survival. He wanted to return to a life full of hope and possibility. I don't know if I can, he said, his voice hesitant. You can do it, Alexander said confidently. I'll be there to support you. Let's start small. Are you ready to give it a try? Victor looked into Alexander's eyes and saw sincerity and support in them. He felt a spark of hope light up inside him. Okay, he said, his voice growing more confident, I'm willing to try. These words became the beginning of a new life for Victor. He agreed, full of hope and fear at the same time. Alexander extended his hand, and Victor, hesitating, shook it. At that moment, an invisible connection was formed between them, which promised to change their lives forever. The next day Alexander brought Victor to his office. It was a modern building with large windows overlooking the city. Victor was amazed by the scale and atmosphere. He never thought he would end up in such a place. Alexander showed him the office, introduced him to the employees, and Victor felt like he was in a fairy tale. Today we'll start with the basics, Alexander said as they sat down at the table. I'll tell you about business, how it works, and what it takes. From the moment Victor agreed to accept Alexander's offer, his life began to change. He could not believe that just a few days ago he was sitting on the sidewalk, full of despair, and now he found himself in the office of a successful businessman. It was like a dream, and at the same time a reality that seemed too good to be true. The next day, when Victor came into the office, he was full of excitement and anticipation. Alexander greeted him with a big smile and a confident look. Today we'll start with the basics, he said, leading Victor into the conference room. I'll tell you about business, how it works, and what it takes to succeed. Victor sat down at a table surrounded by modern technology and bright screens. He felt out of place, but at the same time curious. Alexander began by explaining the basics of business, emphasizing the importance of understanding the market, customers, and competition. He talked about the importance of having a strategy and a plan to move forward. Business is not just about numbers and reports, he continued, it's also about people, how we can help them and make their lives better. Victor listened, absorbing every word. He knew this was not just a theory, but something that could change his life. After the theoretical part, Alexander invited Victor to work on a real project. We have some ideas that we want to develop. I want you to help me with this, he said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Victor felt a spark ignite inside him. This was his chance to prove himself, and he was not going to miss it. Over the next few weeks, Victor threw himself into his work. He studied the market, analyzed competitors, and developed ideas for new products. Alexander was there, supporting and guiding him. He shared his experience, helping Victor develop the skills he needed to succeed. Victor grew more and more confident with each passing day. He began to understand how business worked and felt that his ideas mattered. One day, when they were discussing a new project, Victor suggested a concept that he thought could attract customers. Alexander listened carefully and, to his surprise, approved of the idea. "That's a great idea, Victor. Let's develop it further," he said, and Victor felt a surge of pride. However, not everything went smoothly. Victor faced difficulties and sometimes doubts came over him. He wondered if he was really capable of more than just being homeless. One day, while he was sitting in the office, a feeling of uncertainty came over him. "Alexander, what if I can't handle this?" he asked, his voice shaking with anxiety. Alexander, noticing his concern, came closer. "Victor, we all face difficulties. The main thing is not to give up. I believe in you, and you should believe in yourself. You have already made a huge step forward, and this is only the beginning." These words inspired Victor, and he decided to continue working on himself. Every day he became more and more confident in his abilities. He began to communicate with colleagues, share his ideas and receive feedback. Alexander noticed how Victor was changing, and this gave him strength. He understood that his help really matters, and this inspired him to continue supporting Victor. Soon Victor was not only part of the team, but an important member of it. His ideas began to bear fruit, and he felt that his life was becoming more meaningful. He was no longer that lost man sitting on the sidewalk. He was now part of something bigger, and that gave him strength. One day, when they were working on a new project, Alexander asked Victor to give a presentation to potential investors. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice full of support. Victor felt his heart beat faster. It was a big step, but he knew he was ready. "Yes, I'm ready," he replied, confidence in his voice. From the moment Victor accepted Alexander's offer, his life began to change, and he felt that he was finding his place in this new world. Every day brought new challenges and opportunities, and he was looking forward to what the next one would bring. However, the upcoming presentation to potential investors caused him mixed feelings. On the one hand, it was a chance to demonstrate his skills and ideas. On the other, a fear of possible failure. On the day of the presentation, Victor woke up early. He couldn't sleep, his thoughts were racing between excitement and fear. He looked in the mirror and saw in his reflection a man who was no longer the homeless man sitting on the sidewalk. There was a spark of hope in his eyes, and he knew that this was his chance. He dressed in his best suit, which Alexander had provided for him, and headed to the office. When he arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Alexander and the team were preparing for the meeting, discussing the last details. Victor felt his heart beat faster when he saw how many people would be present at the presentation. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked, noticing his nervousness. "Yes, I am ready," Victor replied, although doubts were still raging inside him. The presentation took place in a large conference room, where investors, potential partners and team members gathered. Victor stood next to Alexander, who confidently presented their project. Then it was his turn. He stepped forward, and at that moment all eyes were on him. Victor took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hello, my name is Victor and I am happy to introduce you to our project," he began, trying to sound confident. His voice shook, but he continued. He explained the concept they were working on, how it could change the market and benefit customers. Victor tried to convey his passion and confidence, and to his surprise, he began to feel his fear fading, giving way to confidence. With each word, he became more and more immersed in his pitch. He used the charts and graphs he and Alexander had prepared to support his ideas. He talked about how their product solved real problems for people and how they planned to go to market. At that moment, Victor felt like he truly believed in what he was saying. He saw how the investors were listening to him, and that gave him strength. When he finished, the room was silent. Victor felt his heart pounding in his chest. He waited for a reaction, and soon one of the investors raised his hand. "I have a question," he said, and Victor felt the tension rise. "How do you plan to deal with the competition?" Victor answered the question without losing his composure, drawing on the knowledge he had gained from Alexander. He explained how their unique approach and focus on clients would help them stand out from the competition. Victor's answers were confident and clear, and he noticed the investors exchanging glances as he discussed his words. After the presentation, Victor felt like a huge weight had been lifted off him. He had done it. He had been able to present his ideas and answer questions. Alexander came up to him and patted him on the shoulder. "You did great, Victor. I'm proud of you," he said, and Victor felt a surge of pride. A few days later, they received positive feedback from investors. Some of them were interested in their project and expressed a desire to invest. Victor could not believe that his ideas and efforts were starting to bear fruit. He felt that his life was really changing, and this was just the beginning. Victor became more and more confident with each passing day. He continued to work on the project, contributing his ideas and suggestions. Alexander was always there, supporting and guiding him. Together they discussed strategies, developed plans, and worked on improving the product. Victor also began to communicate with other team members. He shared his thoughts and ideas, and soon he was perceived as an equal. He felt that his opinion mattered, and this gave him strength. He was no longer that lost person sitting on the sidewalk. Now he was part of the team. Since Victor's successful presentation to investors, his life had been filled with new opportunities and challenges. He felt that his efforts were beginning to bear fruit, and this gave him confidence. However, with each passing day, he realized that the path to success would not always be easy. The atmosphere in the office was intense, and Victor understood that he was no longer just a participant, but an important part of the team on which the success of the entire project depended. In the first days after the presentation, Victor threw himself into the work. He actively participated in discussions, proposed new ideas, and looked for ways to improve the product. Alexander continued to support him, but now Victor felt that he could make decisions on his own and take responsibility for his actions. This was a new and exciting experience for him. He began to realize that his opinion was valued, and this inspired him to further achievements. However, with the growing responsibility came new challenges. One day, when Victor was working on an important report, he encountered a problem that he could not solve. He felt the pressure mounting and doubts began to overwhelm him. "What if I can't handle this task?" he thought, losing confidence. At that moment, he remembered Alexander's words about difficulties being part of the path to success. Victor decided not to give up and asked his colleagues for help. He gathered his team and explained his problem. To his surprise, his colleagues were eager to offer their ideas and solutions. This was an important moment for Victor. He realized that teamwork can lead to better results than individual efforts. Together they developed a strategy that helped solve the problem, and Victor felt his confidence return. He realized that he was not alone in his efforts, and that the support of the team could be the key to success. Victor became more and more confident with each passing day. He began to actively participate in meetings, share his thoughts and suggest ideas. His colleagues began to notice his progress and began to turn to him for advice. This was incredibly inspiring. Victor felt that his opinion mattered, and this gave him strength. He was no longer that lost person sitting on the sidewalk. Now he was part of a team that was working on something meaningful. However, not everything went smoothly. One day, the team faced a serious problem. One of the key investors decided to withdraw their funds. This news shocked everyone. Victor felt his heart squeeze with anxiety. What will happen to our project now? He thought, realizing that this could be a serious blow to the whole team. Alexander gathered everyone in the conference room to discuss the situation. He talked about the importance of staying positive and finding solutions, rather than dwelling on problems. Victor listened to him, and his words inspired him. After the meeting, Victor decided he wasn't going to give up. He gathered the team and proposed brainstorming to find new sources of funding. It wasn't easy, but Victor felt the team was up for the challenge. They began exploring various options, including crowdfunding and finding new investors. Victor was actively involved in the process, and his ideas began to bear fruit. Soon the team found several potential investors who were interested in their project. Victor felt his confidence growing and he understood that his efforts were not in vain. He continued to work on improving the product and actively communicated with new potential partners. This was a new stage in his life, and he was ready for any challenges. Victor became more and more confident in his abilities with each passing day. He began to realize that his past did not determine his future. He was ready to fight for his dreams and was not going to stop there. Significant changes had occurred in his life, and he understood that this was only the beginning. Victor felt that his life was filling with meaning, and he was ready for new challenges that awaited him ahead. Every day Victor became more and more immersed in the world of business and startups. His confidence grew, and he realized that he was no longer just a team member, but one of its key players. However, despite all his achievements, he realized that new obstacles and challenges awaited him ahead, which would require not only professional skills, but also personal strength. After the team successfully attracted new investors, Victor felt a surge of energy and inspiration. He worked hard to improve the product, collecting feedback from users and analyzing the market. Every day brought new ideas, and Victor eagerly shared them with the team. He understood that their project could change people's lives, and this gave him strength. However, not everything was going smoothly. One day, Victor faced a serious problem. One of the developers working on a key component of the product suddenly quit. This news was a real blow to the team, as his departure could delay the launch. Victor felt the pressure mounting. How will we cope without him? He thought, losing confidence. At this point, Victor remembered the importance of staying positive and finding solutions. He gathered the team and proposed a meeting to discuss the situation. We can't afford to give up, he said, trying to inspire his colleagues. Let's think about how we can redistribute tasks and find a temporary replacement. The team actively engaged in the discussion, and soon they came up with a plan that allowed them to continue working despite the developer's absence. Victor realized that teamwork is not only about sharing ideas, but also about supporting each other in difficult times. He felt his confidence returning, and this inspired him to continue to act. Together they were able to overcome the problem, and Victor realized that in difficult times it is important not to lose hope and to look for solutions. Victor became more and more confident with each passing day. He began to actively participate in strategy meetings where market entry plans and marketing strategies were discussed. His ideas began to be taken seriously, and colleagues began to turn to him for advice. This was incredibly inspiring. Victor felt that his opinion mattered, and this gave him strength. But the team soon faced a new challenge. Competitors were aggressively pushing a similar product, and Victor knew they had to act fast to avoid losing market share. He gathered the team and suggested conducting a competitor analysis to understand what benefits they could offer their customers. We need to stand out from the competition, he said. Let's think about what makes our product unique and how we can highlight that. The team worked hard on the analysis, and soon they came to the conclusion that their product really had unique features that could attract customers. Victor suggested focusing on a marketing campaign that would highlight these benefits. He began developing ideas for advertising materials and promotional strategies, and his enthusiasm was infectious for the entire team. Victor became more and more confident in his abilities with each passing day. He began to realize that his past did not determine his future. He was ready to fight for his dreams and was not going to stop there. Significant changes had occurred in his life, and he understood that this was only the beginning. Soon the team launched a new marketing campaign, and the results exceeded all expectations. Sales began to grow, and Victor felt that his efforts were paying off. He understood that teamwork and support from colleagues were key factors in their success. This inspired him to achieve further. However, Victor also realized that with growing success came new challenges. He began to receive offers of cooperation from other companies, and this presented him with new challenges. Victor realized that he needed to develop his skills and knowledge to cope with new challenges. he began to attend seminars and courses, studying new trends in business and technology. Victor became more and more confident with each passing day. Victor's story had reached a milestone. His efforts, persistence, and desire for personal growth had paid off. The team he had so actively joined had achieved significant success. The product they were working on had not only become successful in the market, but had also gained recognition among users. Victor felt that his dreams were beginning to come true, and this gave him strength. However, despite the success he had achieved, Victor knew that this was only the beginning. He realized that the business world was constantly changing, and in order to stay afloat, he needed to adapt to new conditions. Inspired by the success of his team, he decided that he wanted to continue to develop and grow as a professional. Victor began actively seeking out opportunities for training and self-improvement. He enrolled in project management and marketing courses, and began attending conferences where he could exchange experiences with other entrepreneurs. Soon Victor received a cooperation offer from a large company that was interested in their product. It was an important offer, and Victor understood that it could be a new stage in his career. He gathered a team and discussed possible development paths with them. Together they decided that it was worth considering the offer, but at the same time it was important to maintain their independence and uniqueness. After much discussion and analysis, Victor and his team decided to collaborate, which allowed them to expand their horizons and enter new markets. This decision was not only a step forward for them, but also an opportunity for further growth and development. Victor felt that his efforts and desire for success were not in vain. Victor became more and more confident in his abilities every day. He understood that his past does not determine his future, and that every new challenge is an opportunity for growth. He continued to work on himself, developing his skills and knowledge, and this inspired him to new achievements. Ultimately, Victor not only became a successful professional, but also learned to value teamwork and support from colleagues. He realized that success is not only about personal achievements, but also about the ability to inspire others and share your experience. His story became an example of how persistence, hard work, and self-confidence can lead to success. And he was ready for new challenges that awaited him ahead.